Hello, my name is David Duffield. I am the history coordinator at the Center on Colfax. I have the pleasure of interviewing Tobly McSmith for the Queer Authors Expo for Denver's Queer Pride this year. So as many of you may know, Tobly is the author of Stay Gold, a teenage love story about a transgender boy who's stealth at his new Texas high school and a cisgender girl who is drawn to him. This is kind of a romantic story couched in a lot of different themes, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But just a quick note for our viewers, as many of us know, Pride has been canceled for this year because of the COVID virus, and we're living with a lot in 2020. The center's mission has always been to care for the communities of Colorado who are LGBTQ, and we continue that mission tonight. One of the things I want folks to take away from this talk is that we're really strong and that our community, no matter what, cannot be defeated because our community is so strong. In addition, all of our videos featured on the Queer Authors Expo will be accessible on the center's website and social media platforms. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tobly McSmith. Tobly's going to introduce himself here in just a moment, and I just want to thank you for joining us this evening to talk about your novel.
Hey, yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate the chance to be here talking to you. Happy Pride. I am Tobly McSmith, author of Stay Gold. This is my debut novel. And when I'm not writing novels, I write parody musicals with my best friend. We have written musicals about Friends and The Office, and we have one about Parks and Recs coming up too.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about who you are and where you come from.
Cool. So I was born in Texas. I currently live in New York City. I was born in Texas in 1980, and I went to school in Austin, and I went to college in Lubbock, Texas, which is at the kind of top of Texas there. And as soon as I could, I ran up to New York City, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be there. And I came to New York, had never been to New York before, moved with 2 suitcases. And I found a job at HarperCollins, the book publisher. This was 16 years ago. And so I worked at HarperCollins for 16 years. I just retired last year, to be a full-time writer.
Oh, wow.
Which is amazing.
That's amazing. So
Yes.
You've worked in the publishing world, and now you're working in the writing world in New York. And tell us a little bit about what intentions you had in writing Stay Gold.
So I was at a sales conference actually for HarperCollins, and we were talking about YA books, and we were talking about own voices. And, I was sitting there and I was thinking, and we were talking about The Hate You Give and other books that give light to stories and experiences of people. And in that moment, this story just kind of filled my head of this boy in Texas, and he goes to a new high school, and he decides to go stealth at this high school or hide his gender identity in hopes of living in what he sees as the normal life. He just wanted to exist. And the story kind of took place in my head as I sat there in this meeting, and Georgia, the love interest, she came about, and it was just like this magic moment where I knew I had to write this story, and I did. And it took about a year from that moment when I thought of it to finish it. But I wanted to write a story about a trans boy. I hadn't seen a lot of books with experiences like my own. And I wanted to put those in a book, like a boy that's binding his chest, and then a boy who's saving up for his gender-affirming top surgery. He's getting misgendered, he's getting dead named, and he's experiencing going stealth, which is something that I've done and do in my life. So I wanted to put all of those things that I've gone through and going through into this book so that people could understand one experience of what it's like to be transgender today.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Tell me, it seems like between you and the main character, Pony, there are a lot of similarities, and many people say when you write your first novel, you put your heart and soul and you write what you know. Tell us a little bit about the similarities or what you see of yourself and your character.
So much of it. He loves movies, I love movies, but also he's in Texas. And so when I was living in Texas in the late 90s, which is his age, there wasn't a lot of transgender people. I had never met a transgender person. In the college I went to in Lubbock, Texas, I was trying to find myself. I was trying to figure out who I was, and I visited the LGBT website of the campus's LGBT website, and it had a panic button that you could hide that you were looking at the LGBT website in case someone walked by. And so I lived in this world there was a lot of hiding and secrecy, and I moved to New York. So when I sat down to write this, it's kind of, I imagined what it would be like if I had come out at a young age and was able to live as truly me at that age, because I didn't transition until much later in life. And so there was a lot I've put in my own experiences through Pony and dealing with, falling for a girl and having to come out to her and tell her who you are, and fears that she might say, I can't do that, A lot of that stuff that I've been through, I wanted Pony to experience, and I wanted people to know what that felt like.
Wonderful, thank you. So over the course of the novel, without giving away too much, we see Pony develop from a young man who is living in Texas and has had to start a new life. What happens in sort of the early part of the novel that you feel folks can take away most?
The early part is just being in the head of a transgender person, right? What I walk into when I think about walking into a bathroom, and how it feels to come out to his parents, which he talks about. I wanted to put people into that mindset to see how everything is either a challenge or something that needs to be figured out, And so that's really what the first part I feel like is about, and creating the love, the kind of spark between them too.
What are some things in the novel that you have to sort of explain, because a person who's not had the experience of being a transgender male wouldn't necessarily know? So what are some of those things that you have to kind of like educate or teach people about?
So I think, and everyone knows about proper pronouns and not dead naming, which is using the name that the person has retired for their new name. But I wanted to teach people about how much pronouns matter to us, but not by wagging the finger, but by showing how much it meant to Pony when people got his pronoun right. When they said, how that made his heart open up and how good it felt. Because we are still in such a learning time, and we will continue to, about LGBT life and about, and I think that people are scared of getting pronouns wrong, but I wanted to show them how good it felt when you get it right, and how much that means to the person. And so that was really important to me, and how much it hurts to hear your dead name, and every trans person is different, and their uncomfortability is different around things. But, it really does set you aback when you hear that name or the pronouns are wrong. So I wanted to really show that. And the binder. So as a trans male, I would bind my chest, and I wanted to show people what kind of fabric thing that was, how hard it was to put on, how constricting it is. People get injuries from binders that are too tight. I wanted people to understand how hard those things are, but how important. I hated them, especially in the summer, the sweating, but I wouldn't have left my house without it, because it was my safety. It made me feel who I was. And so I want people to see how important these things are, so that they get them right and understand them better.
Wonderful, thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Are there other things like the pronoun usage and the binding that are in the novel that you really think people should take away, or interpersonal relationships or different problems you see?
Coming out is the big theme of it, and for trans people, coming out is complicated, because in some instances it's not safe to come out. It doesn't feel comfortable to come out. And everything is different, right? But I wanted to show how it feels to think about that, and how it feels to come out, or to feel like I should be coming out and I'm not. And I wanted people to know, that it's a big, important conversation that needs to be had around transgender people, right? And I do see coming out as an act of bravery, but I understand that we can't. And there's places that I'm not out because I don't feel safe. And, you know, such a goal in that is that it needs to be a safe enough place that we can come out or not come out, but feel comfortable and in ourselves and feel safe, right? It's the feeling of safety that I was able to come out at work and all of that. When I finally felt safe enough, I would come out. So
Right.
I hope there's days when it's safe enough that when people want to come out, they can, because that's so important.
Right. As a cisgender white male, I still find myself hiding my sexuality sometimes when I'm in a particular workplace. And while it's not necessarily the same thing, I still have to make sure that I'm safe or that I'm not going to be judged or hurt because of that as well. But in the character's case, the character is I mean, Pony is 16, I believe,
Yes.
and
Yep.
throughout this is Pony's senior year of high school. So in a lot of these regards, there are different instances of small coming outs, you know, the long, I won't say romance or conversation beginning between Pony and Georgia, the love interest. Um, there's also tension between Max and Pony. I believe at one point, if I remember correctly, when Max is signing a petition or trying to get a petition for a transgender friend, um, and Max is like, if you don't sign this, I'm going to like disown you as a friend. But Pony feels like he can't really feel safe doing that because I think the quote is like, it'll out me to 5,000 people or something. So what
Right.
was it? Tell me a little bit about what went on as in your thinking as you were writing this dialogue.
Yes. So Pony has a best friend. His name is Max, and he's a trans guy who goes to a different, more accepting art school during. And Max, I understand, and I've met versions of Max, and what he believes is that we need, as trans people, to be out, and we need to be at protest, and we need to be at city halls talking, and we need to be loud because there's so few of us that we need to be on the front lines all fighting. And that is an incorrect way to think, but also I understand a Max character that puts everything on the line and wants everybody else to help too. And I have actually had an experience where I wasn't out to a group of people and there was pressure to like post something. And I knew in that moment, if I post this, they might question it and what will that be? And I felt conflicted about posting it, which was so devastating for me. It was hard. And because, but I wanted Max to be that character, to have that dialogue and to think about those things and what is right about coming out and how should you talk to your friends about it. And I think Max is young and has stuff to learn too, but his passion is there to make it a better place for trans people, and I see that.
So for me, when I read the dialogue, I thought, Max's heart is in the right way, for Max. But for Pony, it didn't seem like, I mean, Pony's dealing with so many different things. The microaggressions in between the school, just worrying about like whether or not the Georgia is going to reciprocate. I mean, it's very complicated, and I felt like, I personally felt like Pony made the correct decision in like not coming out or not supporting at that time. But that was my own interpretation. It's this idea of the power dynamic between people who are sort of out and proud and the people who may not have that choice. That was
Right.
kind of my takeaway.
Right. And I wanted to show that. And I know it's upset people to see a Max-like character pushing it. And I get it. No one should come out. No one should feel like they come out. It's not that. But I wanted to show that because it felt very real to me. It felt like conversations that I've had in my life. And I wanted to bring that to the page. It felt important to me, even if it feels wrong. But Max is so lovable and he wants the best. His intentions are there. He just hasn't had the same experience of Pony.
Yeah.
And when in certain variations, sometimes I've walked into a room and I go through and I have to think that person knows this, that person knows this person knows this much, and it's a lot. It's a lot to think about.
Well, eventually Pony, in a very dramatic way, changes that. And without, of course, giving too much away, it is phenomenal. And the very first person to, as they say, clap is Georgia. What did it mean writing those moments for you? Where did you see the characters and yourself as the narrator in that story?
Oh, yes, and there's this one moment in the book where Georgia she sees it. She sees it and then she starts to see it more after an event happens, but it's a beautiful thing, and that's what I love Georgia, because she has a lot to learn about herself and about trans people, and we go through the journey with her of this, and she doesn't say things right, as nobody does. Nobody says things right, and she's processing something that she didn't even know she was going to have to process, you know. So I think she's a bit messier, but she's learning, and you get to see her learn, and you get to see her open up her heart to possibilities that she didn't even think she would be okay with at the beginning, which I think is a beautiful process.
Do you feel like that was a difficult process for her, or was it just more an evolution?
I think it was an evolution through a bunch of realizations. Georgia has a problem with the truth. She likes to lie and exaggerate, and she needs to learn about herself too. You know, there's several themes in this book, but being true to yourself is the one that I wanted most characters to have to think through during it. And their arcs were there. And Georgia has a lot to come through with her dishonesty and her lying and her, you know, and Pony and their love. So she really evolves the most, now that I kind of think about it. I've never said this, but out of all the characters, which is, I love to watch people evolve.
To change over time. Yeah, it's a beautiful metamorphosis in a lot of ways. Tell
Right.
me, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you?
Oh, boy, do I.
So it wouldn't be a good author interview. Thank you so much for that. Can you hold it up just a little bit for us? Thank you. So this is Stay Gold. Now the poem itself is inspired, or the title is inspired by the saying to stay gold. Is that correct?
Right. So, you know, S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders and the Robert Frost poem is where it kind of originated. And in The Outsiders, which was such an influential book to me, I've always felt like an outsider. It happened in the 60s, and to that book, how I read it, when Johnny says to Ponyboy, stay gold, he's saying stay innocent to all the violence that's around, stay innocent to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of years ago, when I first started my transition, I saw stay gold tattooed on someone, as you would in Brooklyn. And I remember this process where I said, oh, that means to remain true to myself. To stay gold is to stay true to yourself, to me. And I think the LGBT community has said stay gold as a way to stay true to yourself. You know, like, we can't be innocent to the world that's around us. There's if you read the statistics, there's discrimination, there's violence, there's everything against trans people. And so there's no way to be innocent to the world. What we have to be is ourselves. And what the book asks of our allies is to make the world safe enough that we can be ourselves, that we can stay gold. And that was such an important thing to me. So stay gold to me definitely is a look at that, and remaining true to yourself. And I now have it tattooed on me right here.
Wonderful. So, Tobly, tell me, like, you just said an extraordinarily poignant thing, which is that the novel asks something. The novel asks the allies to help make the world safer. I think that is a very beautiful way to put my own takeaway from the novel, which is that there were a million moments in reading it where you go, oh my God, no, or oh my God, yes, and you're on the edge of your seat wondering what happens page after page. And there are those moments where you're enlightened and you go, oh my God, I've never thought about that. I don't have that lived experience. Is it possible that I can help someone in that experience, be a little bit happier, or maybe, just get to know their story, or maybe just ask the question? Do you feel like other allies and people who are not transgender might ask those same questions?
After reading the book?
Yeah.
I would hope so. I mean, there were the two biggest reasons I wanted to write this was I wanted to write a book that if I was 15 in Texas and I read, I'd say, there's my story. There's a part of my story. And that means so much to me. And I've already heard from kids that have said that. And there is nothing that has felt better than getting a message from a trans kid saying, thank you, I finally see myself in a book. And that is so beautiful. But the second part was to write a book that allies can understand more, maybe without having to ask their trans friend those difficult questions they shouldn't be asking about surgeries, about binding and all that. It's a subtle education of a life so that you can understand more and be accepting more and protect, right? We need protection. There's discrimination in the workplace, in housing, in everything. Like we need help, and we need more people to understand our stories. Stay Gold is just one story, but every story that you read, you become to understand more.
I hear that. I hear that. So I realize I may have pronounced your name when we just met. Tobly like wobbly. I apologize.
You got it. Oh, that's perfect.
To myself on camera. So Tobly, I just want to ask a question. It wouldn't really be a good author interview without asking you to read a page. Would you mind?
Oh boy, yes. I don't mind. I didn't. You want me to read the last page? Does that make sense?
No, I mean it's usually accustomed to ask the author to read one of their favorite passages, and the passage you talk about where I forget who says it. Stay Gold, Pony. That might be a really good one to read, I think.
I think that one gives away a little bit.
That's fine.
But you've now made everybody need to read that page. So they're I want to read a little about the binder.
Okay.
So Pony it's his first day of school, and he has come home, and he's up in his room, and he's taking off his clothes. Okay. All right, let me do this. I had no practice, so I'm going to say everything. After finishing dinner and clearing the plates, I head upstairs to my room and kick off my shoes. I find myself in the full-length mirror and watch as I unbutton my shirt, revealing my binder. I wear it under my clothes to smooth out my chest. Gender-affirming compression binders come in all shapes and sizes. The most popular fit look like a sports bra, but I prefer a more masculine tank top. It's basically a medical bandage undershirt made of thick polyester that's so tight it restricts breathing and squishes my organs together. Exactly what you want to wear for 12 hours on a hot day. But to me, it's worth the risk. Yep. No matter how much I complain about these polyester torture traps, I wouldn't leave my house without one on. Binders have become my protective layer, my second skin, my shield that makes me feel safe and more important. This is the discomfort I put myself through to feel more comfortable.
Wonderful.
So in that way, I wanted people to be in Pony's head and see the risks of binders. There's people break ribs from wearing them and have like permanent damage, but we need them because that is how we present ourselves. It's so important.
So as a signifier in the novel, what does the binder mean?
Ooh. Oh, I love that.
So it's both a necessity, but it's painful, right? So metaphorically, it also represents a symbol of like liberation, but pain to get liberation. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. It's Pony is stealth or hiding his identity, and binders hide that. They hide your chest. So there is, it feels like you're telling a bunch of secrets or lies, but you're not. You're trying to be safe, and you're trying to, not raise flags with people that it might get dangerous to do that around, or you might be discriminated against.
There's pain in this book, and it's shocking to some readers when you get to that part or those parts. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but there is a scene towards the end of the book where Pony is assaulted, and then the antagonists rip off Pony's binder. You know, that was an extraordinarily painful moment for me to read. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on in your process in your writing that scene?
Yes. And there's another example of what that binder symbolizes, right? Because they take it off of him. They remove his safety, his protection, his that was incredibly hard to write. It took me 2 weeks. I felt so depressed after enduring it. There's, I would say 85 to 90% of what Pony goes through, I have. But this instance, I hadn't, right? So I had to put myself in this moment and go there. But I felt it was important for it to happen because it happens so frequently. When you look at the statistics of trans guys and violence against them or trans people, it's there, it exists, and I couldn't ignore it. And I wanted to highlight it because it's important for people to know that it's in a bathroom, big spoilers, but that's what I feel like when I walk into bathrooms sometimes. I wonder, am I going to get beaten up? Is this going to be a situation? There's safety issues, and I wanted people to know that so that there can be less of this. And I wanted, and I didn't want to ignore the statistics of how often it does happen to people,
I remember reading, since you spoke about it, when Pony is walking into the bathroom, he has to think, okay, who is this? Who knows what's going on? It seems like, there are so many things we take for granted. And as you mentioned earlier, you have had it in the past to walk into some places saying, who knows what, who knows where, exactly. So it's that process of constant, like, insecurity in a way, or not insecurity, but maybe hyper awareness, this vigilance that might seem to cause anxiety, a great deal of it in anybody experiencing that.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, and yeah, it exists. And there's over 50, like I read a study of trans guys, and 50% of them are depressed and 50% of them are anxious. But these feelings come out, when you're having to do all of this thinking, all of this wondering. He gets to a certain point, he doesn't know when to tell Georgia that he's trans. He doesn't want to tell her too soon to lose it, but not too far, and that is something that I've gone through. And I've had girls say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because I can't change that about me. I am trans, and they liked me, but then that was the breaking point. And so that felt so real to me, that situation.
Love is often a leap of faith. Love is acceptance, and love is also painful in a lot of ways.
Yes.
In many,
but I've had women not care, like, like it doesn't, but yes, it happened.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who didn't reject me because of it.
There's happy stories.
Crazy. Yeah.
There's happy endings in a lot of places, but for it seems to me like, if I were not going to give away the end, that it would not be improbable that the characters would end up being happy. At least in the distant future, I would like to see them, be old and married, but that is my head. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the things that you want youth to get out of this, right? But there's also something more that you want folks to get out of this particular novel, and it's called the Stay Gold Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, I'd be honored to. So halfway through writing this book, I'm sitting there, and the news comes on, and Trump has banned transgender people from being in the military, and that was devastating. It was so hard to think, why, and I looked it up, and Trump pointed to the high cost of gender affirming surgeries as the reason to cut trans people out of the military. But then come to find out that they spend way more on Viagra each year, which is interesting.
Yeah,
But You know, I'm writing this book about this kid who wears a binder, who's saving up for his gender affirming surgery, his top surgery. And I realized this is a moment where I can take this book and I can do more with it. So I decided to create the Stay Gold Fund. And we're going to be providing financial assistance for trans and non-binary people to get gender affirming surgeries if they need them. And just to be clear, not every trans or non-binary person needs gender affirming healthcare to feel completely them. But if they do, we want to be there to help, because the price of them, the cost is so expensive. It's really hard to navigate your insurance at times to get them to pay for it. So I want to help change people's lives. And the stigma, this is the second part of the fund, the stigma around these surgeries. Obviously, there's a stigma if Trump can point to it for banning a whole, section of people. So I wanted to help get rid of the stigma around these surgeries and really show how important they are to the well-being. There's many studies of trans and non-binary people feeling less depressed, feeling less suicidal once they get their gender affirming surgeries. So they are vital to our mental and physical health. And that's such an important story. And I don't want it to get lost by people like Trump, So yes, Stay Gold Fund, it's up now. The website is staygoldfund.org. We're raising money. I'm giving half of my money from Stay Gold. I'm putting it in there, and I'm doing fundraisers and just bringing awareness to this important life-changing issue for trans people.
Wonderful, thank you. So tell me a little bit about where someone can help with this. They can first of all go to the website staygoldfund.org, and then they can donate there. Can they help you in terms of donating their time or contact you some way?
They could, if they want to. There is a contact form. Write it. I will write back to you. This all this was happening, and a pandemic happened, and there's so many more important places to give money, more urgently needed places right now. But in the next years, we're going to be really building this, so we could use all the help we could get.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what kinds of things can people do to help you? So first of all, probably buying and reading the book.
Buy the book and know that, money is going to the Stay Gold Fund when you buy it. Buy it for your family members. Buy it for people who have questions about trans people, and go to staygoldfund.org and check it out.
I bought my copy today, and I am proud to say, or not today, I bought it like a week and a half ago, and I got a copy in advance. But I also, I'm proud to say that it's a fun read. Like, it's heartwarming and beautiful and tough and painful. But when you get to the end, you're just like, you're enveloped in this warmth that makes you feel like the world's going to be okay. I had a great time and a great privilege reading this novel. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted someone to take away from it. So, yeah.
When I give this novel to kids that I teach, or to gender nonconforming youth, or to cisgender youth, one thing as a teacher or as a coordinator I want folks to take away is that it's okay. Here's a story that you can see someone else, you can see other people in. And I want people to understand that that's going to help change lives, create visibility, but most importantly, give voice to people who may not necessarily even have the words to understand what they say. What do you want someone to take away when they read this novel, if they're maybe a transgender youth or a gender nonconforming?
Just that they're not alone, and that there's more people experiencing it. And really, the biggest theme of the book is staying true to yourself and watching these characters learn how to stay true to themselves and how important it is. And that is, I want people to walk away having read one experience of a transgender person and the feeling of staying true to yourself. That is the most bravest journey I've taken in my life several times, and I hope that's clear in the book.
And what would you want a cisgender youth to take away from this?
More understanding and less bullying, right? If I would love them to see this is how it is, and this is what trans kids are thinking about, and this is how hard it is to walk into a bathroom, and just the understanding is what furthers the whole dialogue.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thinking about it. All right.
Yeah.
Tobly, is there anything we haven't talked about in the last 30 minutes that you'd like to cover?
Oh, I think we got it all. You have been so wonderful. You are a great interviewer. I've really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I sincerely appreciate it. On behalf of the folks at the center and everybody who has the privilege and the honor of reading and giving this book to someone, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Well, for more information, you can find Tobly's website at staygoldfund.org. You can buy the novel on Kindle as well as in your local bookstore. Here in Denver, Colorado, you can go to the Book Garden, who helps support this. They're on 44th and Tennyson Streets. For more information, see the center on Colfax's website. Thank you so much again, Tobly. It was a pleasure. And I apologize again for not getting your name consistently right.
I'm never going to forget it.
All right. I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.
All right. Easy peasy. Can you see me?
Picture. What is this picture I'm looking at?
Oh,
You've
I
got
don't
like
know.
a flash and a pipe on?
No, that's not it. I hit the wrong button. Hold on. I have to hit the stop